Minasan konnichiwa, Ali desu. Hi everyone, my name is Ali. Welcome or welcome back to the channel. Today we're doing a very chill video. I'm still recovering from my dental surgery here. I've got a wisdom tooth extraction on Monday this week, and as you can see my face is still a bit swollen here, so chill video. I'm just going to be answering some of the great questions you guys have actually left me in the comment section of my videos lately, and we've got I think 12 questions to cover today, so let's get right to it. So the first question we've got today is about vocab acquisition in Japanese and also kanji acquisition. At Xiaofei89 asks, did you ever use Anki to remember vocab and kanji? I see a lot of people using it, but I particularly hate it. I think it's so boring. I can't actually use it. I have a bunch of cards in it, but can't do it because it's so amazingly boring. If you didn't, can you give tips on how to memorize vocab and kanji? Well, Xiaofei89, thank you for your question. And I think you're mentioning this because indeed I have said in one of my videos recently on how I acquire new vocab now in Japanese as an advanced learner that I actually never used Anki before, and definitely I join you in what you think about the tool. I don't think it's boring per se, it's just that to me flashcards are not very attractive. Let's say. Flashcards have never been a tool that I've used to memorize anything in the past, and it's not only for language learning. I just never used that tool because it's not appealing to me. So I don't think the tool itself is bad necessarily. You know, it's more about whether or not you're used to using it. So just like for anything else, anything that you would like to study and memorize, so any topic, not only language learning, if you're not used to a memorization tool or study technique in particular, and when starting to use it you still don't feel like you're attracted to it, just don't do it, just don't use it. Because it's been my way of doing things, you know, not using things that are not efficient to me, not appealing to me. I just never used Anki. So that's the answer to your question there on whether or not I used it. And so instead of using tools like Anki and basically flashcards tools, I actually relied more on quizzes instead, which are more appealing to me because they almost seem like they're a game, and this way of acquiring vocab works much better on me. So when I was still at beginner and intermediate level in Japanese, I actually used the website japaneseclass.jp. I used it a lot. I was using it basically almost every morning. You know, when I was eating my breakfast, it was like part of my whole routine to go on there and just do vocab quizzes for 30 minutes every morning. And this definitely helped me a lot and worked almost in the same way as, you know, flashcards would. Thanks to the quizzes, I was reviewing a lot of vocab, a lot of volume, which you can also do with flashcards. So it's kind of the same idea. It's just that flashcards and the way they function does not work with me, and I know a lot of people think the same because I've got a lot of coaching clients actually telling me the exact same thing, that they see a lot of people using Anki because it's like the most popular tool to memorize things, and not only for language learning. Again, I've seen people like studying medicine using Anki. Definitely, if it works on you, this kind of tool, try and use it, because I think it's kind of the most optimized flashcard tool available out there. So you should definitely use this one, I recommend. If it doesn't work on you, then you should find other ways to mimic the way Anki functions, but not in the same exact way, if that makes sense. For vocab acquisition and kanji acquisition in Japanese, I mostly relied on quizzes first, and then I relied on immersion a lot. And then towards the end, you know, when I was working my way up to level N1 of the JLPT, I then used more textbooks to actually focus on nuances between vocab words and harder kanji. I studied with textbooks, but then to memorize all of that, I used, again, quizzes, a lot of quizzes, and I used the app Migi a lot towards the end. that's basically what I used for vocab acquisition. All right. Next question. At Kenzie Renea says, do you have a list of all the books you've gone through? In an earlier video, you showed the list after the video with your ratings. You're probably talking about Japanese books, so I'll be focusing on these. I don't remember which list that was that I showed in video, but probably it was my Notion page that I must have shown. And actually I made a Notion tour video last week, so it's available on the channel. It's got all of the books that I have read in Japanese. And to answer your question, I actually don't have a public list of all those books that I have read yet. I will actually make one very soon, and you guys will be able to access it. And I know that, you know, it can be very useful to some of you to get ideas on what you could be reading next in Japanese. So definitely that's been a goal of mine to actually, you know, put everything together into a public list. And I will be doing it on 2 different platforms. The first platform is my own website, actually. So ari-no-yume.com, and on my website I already have referenced the books that I have read on my first year of reading in Japanese, so that was back in 2020. So you can already find this list of books that I have read in Japanese on my website, and I will complete this list with all the other books that I've read until today. And you will also get to see the list on my new book meter Dokshometa account. Dokshometa is actually the Japan Goodreads for Japanese speakers to just record their readings. It works the exact same way as Goodreads for English speakers, and I will be basically transferring all of the data that I've been collecting on my Notion page onto my new book meter account. And I will show this process in video, and then once the video is up, you will then be able to access my public list of books. Alright, next question. At Pixel Heldin asks, I still need to look up a lot of vocab while reading, and I wanted to ask you if you think it's worth to look up every unknown word, or did you also skip some during a reading session in the beginning when the amount got out of hand? Thank you so much. So it's a very important question you ask, and you're not the first person to ask me, and actually basically all of my coaching clients also ask the same thing, because it's a general thing that people wonder about when they start on reading immersion practice. It's a valid concern, and I totally understand where you're coming from. I also ask myself the same questions, and so I'm gonna give you my line of thought on this, and you can basically walk away with it and try and work your way through what works for you and what doesn't. The way I did things was progressively. So when I really first started reading in my target language, so in Japanese, I needed to look up all of the words that I didn't know and the grammar points and everything that I didn't understand in the text, because if I didn't, I wouldn't be able to understand anything. I was at a level still where basically understanding anything written was extremely difficult because I lacked vocab, I lacked kanji knowledge, and I lacked grammar knowledge. So I needed to look up a lot of things to understand, even broadly, what was on the page. And it took me half a book, so half my first book, which was Kimi no Nawa, Your Name, to get more comfortable first with this method of looking up everything. For the first half of the book, I used this method, intensive reading. And then what happened was that I noticed that I didn't need to do it anymore, because I'd done it so much for the first part of the book that I was now able to understand what was on the page without looking up everything. And so the rest of the book I read using the extensive reading method, meaning that I was not trying to understand 100% and more focusing on the global meaning and what I could understand without looking things up. With that experience of reading my first book, I then realized that I needed to do kind of a mix of intensive reading and extensive reading with all of my readings from that point on, because it seemed to me that this was the best way to still learn a lot of vocab and focus on the words that I didn't know and would encounter in context while reading stuff, but at the same time not spend too long reading each book and each material that I would go through. So I hope that makes sense. Doing a mix between those two methods was the best way for me to go through new books and reading materials. So that's how I dealt with it. You also need to take into consideration that when you start a new book, you need to get used to the way the author writes, so the author's writing style. You also need to get used to the words that the author tends to use, because we all tend to use certain words, and we have vocab range which is completely unique to us because we're all exposed to different things. So it's the same for authors who write books, right? So you will need to get used to the author's vocab range as well. And so the writing style and the vocab range are things that you get used to within like the first 20 to 30 pages of any book. And then once you get past this line, you're able to read much faster and with much more ease. I hope that makes sense. But so you need to also take that into consideration. The more you read, the easier it will get. So just keep on reading, and even if it seems to be out of hand, like you say, in the first part of any book, it will actually get easier. You will get used to the range of vocab words, you will get used to the writing style and the author's way of telling things or explaining things if it's non-fiction. Next question from @cat1184. On another note, I was wondering where you bought your notebooks when I was rewatching one of your videos about note-taking, especially the ones with the cute bear in the different seasons. I think it's from the Notebook Therapy collection. Did you buy them online, or is there a shop in Fukuoka that sells them? Well, I buy my notebooks from a few different shops. So first of all, the Notebook Therapy shop is actually only an online shop for now, as far as I know. And I've got a lot of notebooks from their shop because basically all of the notebooks are absolutely beautiful and to my taste. So I've bought a lot in the past. And then the rest of my notebook collection is coming from Daiso Japan, Loft. And then the last shop I really use is Tokyu Hands, which is now called Hands. Next question by @yomu_jikan. Seeing you enjoying Zelda made me want to play too. Can I play the latest one, or better to start from the very first one to understand the world? The good thing about the Zelda games is that you can play any Zelda game and you won't be lost because each one of them has a different story. You don't need to know the backstory of the characters, since for each game they've got a different backstory. Each game is actually a repetition of the same storyline, but in a different setting and with a different backstory, if that makes sense. So you will definitely be able to play just any game that you choose. You don't need to start with the first one. So there you go. Next question by @KenziRinia. I'd love to know how you keep up with new Japanese book releases. Love your vlog. Thank you so much. How do I keep up with new book releases? Well, in the past I was just like going to the bookstore and looking through what they've got there. So when I was still living in Singapore, I was going to Kinokuniya quite often, the Japanese bookstore, and just, browsing the books there, the books that I saw on the shelves. It was almost the only way I was browsing books. I was also doing it online a little bit on Amazon Japan, but mostly I was going there physically. Now I'm doing it by talking to my friends, because I've got a lot of friends who are also bookworms and who read a lot in Japanese. My husband is more of an avid reader than I am. He reads like 200 books a year, so he knows about all of the new book releases, so of course that helps. I also watch 2 YouTube channels specifically, the one from Beru-san, and also the one called Masaki Books. So 2 booktubers, Japanese booktubers who I also follow, and they obviously talk about new book releases as well. I also keep up with the new book releases through At-chan's channel. He presents new books and he focuses on non-fiction, so obviously it's more about non-fiction books, but I definitely keep up with the new releases thanks to him as well. And then I still go physically to bookstores and I go through the new releases shelves basically 3 times a month at least. You know, it's one of my favorite pastimes to go to bookstores here in Japan. I'm now able to understand pretty much any book title and to, you know, browse the books and go through the books much more easily than I used to. So now that I'm able to do it much more quickly, I do it much more often as well. So there you go. That's how I do it. Next question by @Rhiannonhearts 3036. I just added The Memory Police to my TBR after you gave it such a good review. Have you read 1Q84 by Haruki Murakami? That was my last 5-star review. Thank you for your vlog win. Thank you so much. I haven't read it yet, but it's on my TBR and it is also on my shelf because I have a whole Murakami bookshelf just for Murakami's books. I keep them all, and I've got 1984, all 3 books in hardback, and I will be reading all of them, of course. Next question by @baharb.k1646 asks, I wanted to ask a question. I realized you usually use 2 phrases for listening practice, listening immersion, and technical listening. Could I ask, are they different practices? And if yes, what do you do during these practices? Do you take notes, for example, or do you search every word that you don't know? Sorry, I asked a lot. Yes, I do have 2 different kind of listening immersion practice that I do, and specifically for Japanese listening immersion practice. So the regular listening immersion practice, which you're probably all familiar with, and the technical listening immersion practice. So it's different in 3 aspects. First aspect is in how I choose the materials. When I do regular listening practice, I just choose any material because what I want is to be exposed to as much listening practice as I can. So I just choose any material. My policy is anything's good. For technical listening practice, it's different because I choose videos and other kinds of materials that are very specific to the thing that I want to focus on. So whether it be a business topic or an academic topic or something that is harder, in which I know that I will find either new words or words that I'm still struggling with and that are much more technical, which is where I got the name from for this practice. Technical listening practice helps me build my vocab range for technical words. So words that are rarer and that are really specific to a field in particular, whether it be an academic field or a business field or a work field or whatever. The second thing that differs between those 2 listening practices is in the way I actually go through the material, because when I do regular listening practice, I just go through the material, look up some vocab words, and mostly I focus on what's being said and I just try and understand everything that I can. But there are some times when I'm less focused, and that's fine. When I do technical listening practice, on the other hand, I really treat it as a study session. So I'm much more focused. I pause the video when I need to look up some words, look up some specific sentences as a whole. I take notes. I really focus on the new vocab words or the vocab words that I'm less familiar with. I take notes of them as well, so that's where I take my vocab list, which you've already seen on the channel. And really, this practice is helpful for me to extract technical vocab words which I wouldn't find anywhere or which I wouldn't take notes of during my regular listening practice. And then the third thing I'm doing differently is the tracking of those resources, because I don't track regular listening resources because there are too many, first of all. There are too many and it's not necessary for me to track them. But I do track the resources that I use for technical listening because I actually may want to go back to them, and I do keep, the best ones that I find, I do keep them. And most of them are actually on 4 channels, which I always go back to. At-chan's channel, the Newspeaks channel, the Pivot channel, and then the Wired Japan channel. Those channels are the best ones for me to find the technical listening practice videos. The next question is by Oli Linnea. The way you use ChatGPT seems super helpful. I'll try it for Korean, so maybe I can finally get over my resistance to writing essays. I feel like I always get stuck before I even start, so getting a list of vocab words to include might be a good start. Did you set up a new GPT for essay writing, or do you simply have an open conversation that you return to every time you write an essay? I do the latter, which is that I have one conversation on my ChatGPT account to which I always return when I ask for an essay correction or to give me new prompts for essays. So this is a conversation that I labeled Japanese essays or correct Japanese essays, I think. And I think it's been open on my account for like around 7 months. And like I explained in my video about essay writing, it's actually very important to keep everything in one conversation only on your ChatGPT account, because it helps ChatGPT understand what the context is. Because at the start of the conversation, you would have given it the training prompts, which I explained in my video on the topic. And so because you've got the training prompts at the beginning of the conversation, ChatGPT knows what the context is and can answer you on any new question or any new corrections that you give it for your essays correctly and in a relevant way. Keep everything together in the same conversation. Next question is by Inori5983. It was on my Notion tour video. It looks like it takes a massive time to create that. However, it is fascinating. Doesn't it take too much time to create it rather than actually studying the language? Well, on my Notion tour video, I actually show you guys what my trackers look like for language learning. And so the trackers are not time consuming at all, because you essentially create them once and then you're done with them. You may optimize them along the way, and as you're using them, maybe add a few more things that you want to track, but that's basically it. So essentially creating the tracker, you can do it in under an hour. Creating the tracker takes some time, but then using the tracker is extremely fast. When you update the tracker, if you do it regularly, you don't need much time at all. So if you're talking about my reading log, for example, which I basically update every single day, I open my Notion for like 2 minutes to update my tracker, like 2 minutes per day. It's nothing. And even if I do it at the end of the week, it might take me 15 minutes tops. And it definitely doesn't take away any time from my actual language learning. It's just updating. So it doesn't take that much time at all. You just need to create it once. Once it's created, it's there. It just needs to be updated. And actually, the next question and the last one for today's video is linked to what I just said. And this one is by ariinoyume. And she asks, do you have a set routine for updating your overviews? I often struggle to keep up with keeping them up to date. If I look back, I think maybe there is a pattern there. So like I said, for my reading log, I update it almost every single day. So that's pretty easy to remember. For my language learning resource tracker, for each language, actually I update it every single month, because I actually refer to it when preparing my study recap videos for you guys. So while I prepare those videos, I actually also update my trackers. So I do it once a month. And then when it comes to my yearly goals tracker, I create them once at the start of the year, then review them in the middle of the year if I need to make any revisions to my goals based on how I've been implementing them. And that's pretty much it. So twice a year. Alright guys, and actually that will be it for today's video. We've answered a lot of questions today. I hope you got some insights. Thank you so much to all of you guys who've asked me such interesting questions. If you've got more questions, and if anything that I've said today triggered more questions from you guys, please leave them down below in the comment section. I'll definitely answer either in the comments directly or in video, just like today. So thank you for watching today's video, guys. And as for me, I will see you in my next video on the channel. Bye bye. Matane.
Simple, simple, simple minds. I guess we'll take it one